sie, glaube ich. Mich holen. Sollen wir noch einen Notenspender anmachen? Nein, es muss an. Das sehe ich nicht hier. Oh, das ist wahr. Okay, fang du mit Sopran an. Okay. Es sind nur zwei Verse, ist ja wunderbar. Nee, du tust. Und dies geht weg nach Manfred. Da sind die Farben.
Wir können ab. Wollen wir einmal spielen? Willst du Vorspiel machen? Und dann wiederholen, nur den letzten. Also dann machen wir ganz dritte Strophe machen wir zum Schluss denn. Ja, noch einmal.
Haben Sie den Text für uns?
Ja. Das sind 3 Strophen. Und bei der dritten Strophe machen wir dann nochmal die Wiederholung ganz zum Schluss.
Weil du kannst ja auch den Art einmal oktaviert spielen.
Ja, die. Wollt ihr noch einmal eine Strophe und dann diese Wiederholung, ja? Ja, einfach. Come let us praise the Lord.
Das Klavier muss laut sein. Das Klavier muss laut sein. Du brauchst nicht singen. Nee, ich sag Mikrofon daher. Manfred ist leise, er kriegt ja alle.
Nee. Ich glaube, die sind gar nicht.
Can you please take your seats? Can you please take your seats? Volume okay so?
Ich denke, wir singen jetzt einfach das Lied, ja.
Okay. Mach mal eine Einladung. Ja,
Let us praise the Lord with hearts, hands, and voices. Tell the Lord He has done for you, and praise His name forever.
Ich weiß nicht.
If we could please get seated. Could we please come in? Those of anybody outside, please come in. We still got a few empty chairs.
Toilets, hedges.
We would like to continue, and I'd like Anna to read a word of greeting.
Before I read the word of greeting, I'd like to thank UELC for having a platform here, so you can see me. Right. I'm reading the word of greeting that's coming from the, forgive my German, Evangelische Kirche in Deutschland, or Protestant Church in Germany, EKD. This greeting comes from Bishop Frank Kopania, the Vice President, Ecumenism and Global Ministries, and Reverend Mark Reusch, Executive Secretary, Head of the African Desk. Dear Bishop Yakel, Dear President Springer, honored members of NELCSA SYNOD, we are living in challenging times, times in which violence dominates the global political agenda, times in which international responsibility is buried beneath national interests, times in which climate change hits hardest those who have contributed the least to its causes, times in which hard-won progress in the fight against hunger is being lost, times in which smear campaigns and defamation overshadow balanced and factual discussions. In these challenging times, we are called upon and our voices are needed. Voices that remind the world of God's humanity. Voices that appeal for gracious coexistence. Voices that reflect Jesus' compassionate view of others. The voices of us as Christians and the voices of our churches. That is why it is good to regularly remind ourselves of where we come from, who we are, and above all, whose mission we are here to serve in this world. And at the same time, it is important that we continually reflect together on the path we want to take and how we, as church, can position ourselves to follow it faithfully. Your synod, which will meet from September the 11th to the 14th at Wartburg, has taken up this very task to reflect on your own roots and origins and on the calling as a church in South Africa. At the same time, you will face the question of how the church must change to fulfill this calling with the resources and possibilities available to it. We sincerely wish you all the best for this process. Please know that we, as the Protestant Church in Germany, are with you in thought and prayer. We look forward to hearing the outcomes of your deliberations at the latest during the South America-Southern Africa Partner Church consultation in November in Dresden. Especially in these challenging times, we need fraternal exchange and mutual support as partners and the unique opportunity to learn from one another. Kind regards.
We had a statement earlier on, by Dirk, and I'd just like to read this. Of our Constitution, Section 56, Circuit Council. Circuit Council is comprised of the Dean, his deputy, the elected lay member of Church Council, and of Circuit Council, and his alternate. For that circuit, it assists and advises the dean. Somehow, this law change that happened about 8 years ago has not been implemented in some circuits. So we actually need to vote for an alternate to the deputy. So Circuit Council consists of, in terms of the lay people, the Church Council member, the Circuit Council member, the deputy to the Circuit Council member, those three people, and then we need to elect an alternate to the deputy, and that person is the person who gets the second most votes in that final election. So there's actually three people, not two people, that we need to elect. And all those circuits who never adopted this, I recommend you to please increase your Circuit Council by one person. We'd like to continue with the... Sorry, René.
I don't want to just go to the mic assuming.
No, please
I'd
use...
like to be called.
Yes.
So just for clarity's sake, the lay member on Church Council from a circuit has Church Council commitments and Circuit Council commitments?
Correct.
Okay, just for clarity's sake.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That person, he or she, has got both commitments. The circuit council member has got the commitment of circuit, and or the deputy to that circuit council member has got the commitments. And then the alternate to the deputy is actually a passive position. That means that person only comes in should there be any change in the other three. I'd like our treasurer to continue with the budget.
There we go. Thank you. Just, Mr. President, note to ourselves, when we plan a synod again, it's always good to have finances not in the graveyard. To break it with a lunch is a very good idea. Just hope this is... Okay. Church running costs. Remember, we did deal with pastors in service cost now church running cost. Starting off the top, the bishop cost to company and housing and car allowance and all those kind of car costs. Increases 7.4, 5.8. Traveling and accommodation, we increased with quite a heavy percentage in 2025. Now the reason for that is that the Church Council has 2 years ago decided that we're going to hold some of our Church Council meetings in congregations so that they can get to know us and we get to know them. Now we've been to 3 congregations. So far, we chose the coldest day ever in Piet Retief in August 2023 to go and meet there, but it was still fun. We visited Van der Bijl Park, which was very nice to get to know them as well. And then we went down to Betanian or Isorcha and also visited the Kailagerplatz. So that's why we had to increase that spend a little bit more. Then we've got office costs, which is running the office, renting the office space, the salaries of the 2 ladies and whatever goes with that. That goes up with 3.6 and 6%. Then we've got coordinated training, co-worker training, so to say. And that is a normal sort of 6% increase. So that's funds that are available for co-worker training can be applied here and that money spent. Membership fees, all the various memberships that we have, LUXA, LWF, SACC, we became members recently, UELCSA. UELCSA, we break up the payment into 2 pieces, the UELCSA office or church running cost and the student training cost are dealt with separately. The theological education fund carries the training part, and in here is the rest of it. So in total, and the circuit is an increase of 6%, so in total, the cost increase from 2025 budget by 6.8% and then 5.9% in the year to follow. The set of income, because the congregations were so generous contributors so far, I was bold to follow you and increased the self-assessment contributions to 950 and $1 million, meaning 35% increase. So I'm putting the pressure back to you. Then we've got grant from the EKD. Now I used the 19.5 and the 20, a 20 and the 20.5. So if you can tell me what the rand dollar, what the rand euro exchange is going to be in 2 years' time, please tell me you and I can go into business. And then we've got the DSM fees that we charge them. We increase those also a little bit from the previous budget, which leaves us with funds to recover in 2026, actually reducing by 6.7 and then increasing again. Now that increasing is just a mathematical sum of that big jump and then a lower jump. The base is just different. So those are the detail of the cost. What we found, for some reason, I inherited this on this basis, that the church running costs were actually allocated based on some funny formula. Some guys based on the pastor's post. So for instance, Peter Maritzburg, where Petra and Victor sit, and they are incidentally or planned married, I don't know, and now they have an extra quarter post, and now they actually pay more cost here. And another congregation that has a quarter pastor's post pays less, and we said to ourselves, but hang on, a congregation is a congregation, and it should be allocated a full weighting. I mean, here we had, for instance, Nelspruit, a 50% congregation. So we now made all of the congregations 100% weighting. Waldo up there was I think a 10% allocation, and we increased them as well. So there are now 29 congregations, which is the denominator into the total cost, which is why those costs have actually come down in the 26 year. The same happens obviously with the pastor's post as well. St. Peter's, Pretoria always was a 1.5 post, and with Gertrude moving over, we reduced that, and Trinity Zululand is now becoming a congregation which currently is not looking for a new pastor. It's being led by other structures, and the structures and models team is going to talk more about that. And Winterton has picked up that extra 0.17 which they shared with the ELM. That doesn't have a big effect, the pastor's post. This picture you saw before, I'm not going to talk about that again, but just to show the importance of those self-assessments. This is now the self-assessment hurdle. I've explained it so often, and hopefully it makes sense. If we had taken the total church running cost, and I'm using 26 as an example, it would have cost 122,000 Rand for per congregation to contribute to run the church. But because we are offsetting other income against it, and also this EKD grant, it reduces to 67,000. So if I had to invoice everybody now, 67,000. But because congregations help each other, they contribute self-assessment, they contribute more than what they need to, I can reduce that with another 32,000, leaving it with 34,000 in total. And for the 26 year, as I said, because of those two factors, it decreases by 10.4 and then jumps up again to 38,000. So anybody still unclear about the hurdle rate? Yes, I'll drink a bottle of champagne tonight if everybody understands this. So typically what a congregation is going to be invoiced on a monthly basis is in 2025, your invoice is 62 for a pastor, if you have a pastor and a full pastor's post, 3,191 for church running cost, and then the 2,095 or 25,000 there is the expected hurdle rate, if you wish. And in the years to come, it then obviously is the numbers to go there. Okay. Any questions on the church running cost? And again, what we expend, we recover for the congregations, and it's a balance of 0. Sorry. Investment carry. The budgeted conservatively 5.74% and 5.72% growth. Now, my guess is as good as yours, but that's sort of average interest return, and that's what we went with. And this surplus here, after we allocate it to the various funds, is basically the surplus that we are budgeting for in our budget, which is our catch net, if you wish. Sometimes we make more, as we've done in 23, 24, and sometimes we make less, as we've done in 22. I want to talk a bit about the investment returns. Now, as an investor, and especially somebody that deals with public money, once you put money away in equity investments or whatever, you always, if suddenly, like in 2022, the 2 wars break out and the money drops, you have all the clever guys coming out, and ladies, guys and ladies coming out the woodwork, saying, but yeah, you shouldn't have done this, and you should have done this, and whatever, and it's too risky or whatever. You can see it that way. I did this graph. Now the blue dotted line is a modeling or an assumption. If we had left the money, the investment, purely in money market, supposedly low risk investments, and they are not no risk investments, because a bank can still go bankrupt and then you still lose your money, we would have received 11 million up until 2024. Now, the green bar there is what actually happened. Now, we had a bad year in 2022, but voila, it recovered. Now, we are up to 22 there, so it's double the money that we got here. Now, the green dotted and the blue is just the budget being pulled forward. Now, I can promise you, if tomorrow we have a bad year again, you will have those same guys popping out of a woodwork. So I've said enough about this. So for those of you who are interested what the makeup of our investment is, currently our foreign equity investment exposure is 60.81%, 61%. Our foreign bond is 7.29%, and our local bond is 20% effectively, and the other stuff is smaller cash and property and that sort of stuff. So that's our current makeup of our investments. Anybody who wants to jump out of a woodwork? Okay, and this is then the summary of an income statement. 26, pastors in service, 0, because we recover everything. Same with church running costs, and that's when the budgeted surplus out of the investment carry pocket, leaving us with that budgeted surplus 536 and 605. So what does this mean in summary for impact on the congregation? So from 25, if you've got a pastor in service, from 25 to 26, it's an increase of 6.1, and thereafter an increase of 5%. And here, that's a decrease, and that balances perfectly to 5.3, and that's why I put remember that 50,000 which I added in 1 year and I deducted it in the 1 year, that balanced that perfectly to 5.3. And then the youth pastor self is also a 5.3 and a 5.3 increase. Right, so any questions at this point in time, because this is essentially the budget. The next thing I'm going to ask you is Church Law 1, Schedule 1, which is the schedule that is required by church law for you to approve. So this is basically a summary of everything I told you now, and that 30-pager that you read so diligently. Summary of what the congregations contribute, which is for pastors in service, for church running costs, and that's for KZN fund, and then self-assessed contributions, less what we get, plus what we get in from other sources, giving you the total income, and that's the expenditure, giving us the total expenditure, balancing back to the income less expenses, which is that surplus. So this is what you essentially are asked to approve. Are we going to do it now? Okay. If there are no questions.
Any questions on Church Law 1? Any concerns, any comments? I'm so glad that we have these Synod pre-meetings. They definitely help and answer a lot of questions. We will then go and ask for a proposer and a seconder. Anybody to propose? René Risch. Seconder, Elisabeth Rommelsbacher. Yes. Any abstentions? Please raise your blue card. You counting that there? Thirteen abstentions. Anybody who opposes Church Law 1, the red card. And then all in favor, the green card. Thank you very much. That's a vote of confidence in the work by our treasurer.
Thank you all. Just some housekeeping then. On the documents that you got those schedules. 10.2 is the 2026 contribution schedule. So often I get a phone call from a treasurer from a congregation that says, so what must I pay? Or what is the budget? So it's there. It's on the website. You can find it. It's in that detail. Please share it with your treasurer, who could get the budget in any event. I'll show you just now where it can be found. And then section 74.1, I referred earlier to the prescribed number of offerings. So we reduced M&D. Sorry, Mark, I still haven't changed matter. We reduced that from 10 to 8. They donated it to theological education, which increases to 8. So this is the new prescribed offering schedule, which is then also part of the documentation. Just in the documents that you send out, with 2 areas picked up. One is exactly this schedule, if you read it in the beginning, it says there's no change. But we later decided to change it. So I changed the table, but never changed the heading. So that must actually read prescribed offerings, change from the current increase, from the current by 2 and offering it back to the theological education. So I've already done it, change the written document, which will become the official document which is approved today, to actually say that. And then the other one, thanks Alec for picking that up, nearly a big mistake. There was in paragraph 3.6, total cost of pastor increase, it said 46.1%. It should have said 6.1. So I've also corrected that. So just for interest's sake, there again is a picture, it's a snapshot of how the website looks. This presentation, and I had questions at the pre-meetings, can we get this presentation so that we can share it with our congregants? In here, it's posted there, finance reports to Synod finance presentation. So you can find it there. Instead of me sending it all over to you, you can find it there. Okay, so I guess there's no further questions.
Rainer Focke. Microphone, please.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Just for clarity's sake, 2 things. The congregations get billed for the self-assessed, the monthly contributions. Is that correct?
No.
Not? Okay.
Can I? Okay.
Then my second question, then you can answer the whole story.
Yeah.
There are prescribed offerings or suggested offerings for the self-assessed, and congregations for their own budget maybe have also a part where they pay towards the self-assessed.
Yeah.
Can you just clarify that those two together, or are they separate in working out the self-assessed contribution towards church council or towards...
Our system is so, Rainer, that whatever comes to us for self-assessment, if it's a once-off check, if it's a once-off EFT, or if it is part of the offerings, it goes into self-assessed. So there's no differential for us where that money actually comes from. What we are encouraging, we found what we are encouraging congregations to do is to have the offerings, so it is top of mind, if you wish. But that doesn't stop the congregation to then put extra money on top of that. But that's the reason. For us, it's all one pot. We don't differentiate between the two.
Thank you very much. Seeing we spoke about the Kailagerplatz, the campsite, I think this is maybe a good time to table the report. As we said, all reports are taken as read. Personally, I can just say I've really enjoyed the visit that we had at Kailager. It brought back a lot of very pleasant memories from my youth to be again on that site, and it is very well maintained. We really need to use this place. And you saw earlier on, it does cost us a lot of money, and if we lose it, we're not only losing a part of our heritage, but also future camps for the youth would be a lot more expensive, because we would now have to find some other private or public facilities to actually go to, which are a lot more expensive than what it costs us to use Kailager. So I'd really appeal to all of us to try and finance this place in such a way that it actually can stay with us for many years to come. And at the same time, we don't want Vernon to have too many sleepless nights. On the report for the Kailagerplatz, are there any questions? Or Martin, do you want to? Okay, but a handful is 5, eh?
I think the next equip meeting should be at the Kailager.
While he's busy connecting there, the guy from the Dutch Reformed Church, Rupert de Koning, was sitting next to me, and he said maybe there's also something that other churches could look into. So the question to us will be, how can we engage with other denominations, not just with schools, to make that, to send the information out to others, because I think only for us to finance it's difficult, but whether they will do it or not is another question, but I think the information needs to get out.
Thank you, Rainer, for sharing that, and Martin, I'm sure he's taking note of that.
Absolutely, and we have already started walking in that direction as well. All right. Okay, I just wanted to, the Church Council had the opportunity to see the Kailager site firsthand. I bet they didn't get an opportunity to view it from this angle. But yeah, I thought I'd just give you a very brief introduction, visual introduction, and I wanted to highlight 2 or 3 points out of my report just for your information. So these drone images were taken in last year in June, July, and the Kailager site, this is looking from the sea. A little bit of a closer view there, you can see all our buildings. That's almost the extent of our property there. It extends out to the top a little bit into a sort of a pointy triangle where the river comes closer. And the swimming beach is on the sort of top right there, which we share with the Theo Strand caravan park. There's a bird's eye view of the actual buildings with all the tents set up, those 2 rows of sort of in the slightly above the middle are the tents, 14 tents that people can be accommodated in, and the hall and the kitchen and the ablution block are down at the bottom. And that's a look from the top of the tents. That's a typical group. That was 2024 Children's Kailager. Just a few points that I want to highlight out of my report is firstly that discussions with potential partners, that would be for school camps, but of course anybody else is also welcome to book the camp. But here we're talking specifically of a partner who will regularly utilize the camp and that we'll enter into a formal agreement with. We are in conversation with one where it's not, how should I say, the possibility is not off the table yet, but there are some significant challenges to overcome. Then what's positive, and maybe a bit of a counterbalance to the concerns that Vernon has raised, we actually have had significantly in the last few months more interest for once-off bookings from inside and outside NELCSA. Literally next weekend there's a camp that we were not expecting to have booked that will be going then in 2 weeks' time on the weekend, and there's also other interest, so that's very positive. And then I just want to highlight from the report, this is actually sort of an additional thing just to keep in mind. The site has never made a profit. It wasn't that suddenly COVID stopped it from making a profit, just to be clear on that. But then that the direct operating costs from 2020 to 2024 were covered by the sum of the camp fees and donations from circuits. In other words, the NELCSA funds, which NELCSA so generously provided, did not go towards just covering operating costs. It was actually for significant major repairs, and a large part of that were not just simply repairs that had to be done because something was broken, but were actually improvements that were not there before, that were beneficial for the running of the camps as they are at the moment. So this was not just merely a one-to-one maintenance repairs thing. And I want to show you a few more photos of those. We now have a, am I too long?
Handful, no.
Yes. That is the new driveway up to the kitchen. We can now deliver right into the kitchen, which was always a bit of a struggle carrying heavy things. Much improved walkways in the front area. brand new roof and total revamp of the caretaker's cottage with a nice new hot water geyser. Repainting of some significant places. This is inside the hall. We redid everything with aluminium windows on the sea-facing side, new kitchen sinks, water tank for the caretaker. There is the church council visiting us, standing there at the cross. There's a group having a group devotion. And yeah, just to give you an idea how beautiful that camp is, and may it be retained for many more future generations of our youth. Thank you. Any questions? Yes. Thank you very much. That was a lot of hard work. We tried various other attempts before that, but thank you to the Central Circuit for putting up that cross. Yeah.
To raise funds is to send as many of your children to these camps as possible. This year we had the lowest amount of children at the Kailager camp. The numbers are way down, which means the income for the Kailager site is also way down. So if Synod members can please encourage their congregations to send their kids to these camps, they are really, really awesome and worthwhile. And the Katie camp has grown, so that camp has nearly doubled the numbers, which is positive. But the more people that attend the camps, obviously the more income they can make. So please.
Any other questions on what was just presented, as well as any of the or any comments on the report that was sent out? One question.
Martin, thank you for that presentation and the handful of photos. Are the photos?
I stressed the limit on that one, I do realize.
Are the photos on the website?
Quite a number on the NELCSA website.
Yeah.
Not at this stage. There's quite a few on Facebook pages. Nikki has included a few over the last months, but I can be a little bit more deliberate about getting them onto the website.
Okay, would be good to be able to share with others.
Thank you very much, Martin. We adopted Church Law 1. Can we just go back to number 2? But we have not adopted the budget as a whole. So we need to adopt the budget. Same procedure as last time. Proposal for adopting the budget. We have got Mark Rover. Okay, Holger will then be, are you seconding? Holger is seconding, Mark Rover. I saw him first, but it's not a race. So you got the proposer, you got the seconder, then any abstentions on the budget? Blue card. Could we just hold up one card because the people behind you see another color, so it's a bit yeah. (13) Anybody opposing the budget? Red card. And anybody in favor? Please raise the green card. Thank you very much. And as I said just now, it's a vote of confidence in the work that the treasurer as well as the church council does. It's not just the treasurer, but it's the church council that does the administration of the funds. And thank you again. We have got ideal light and weather today, so I would like to take a little interruption to take a group photograph. And I have been asked if we can also take group photographs of the separate circuits. I don't think time allows that, but we should have enough time to take a group photograph. Look, I think it's just going to take too long if we now start doing that. Wilco's got a very good cell phone, which really takes good photographs. If I can ask one of the visitors who's good with photography to please take the photograph. Or Nikki, you say there's somebody there. Or Udo, have you allocated somebody? Oh, we got NELCSA's media person. So NELCSA's media person will take a photograph, both with the NELCSA camera as well as with Wilco's camera. And if we could all follow instructions of Udo, Udo will tell us where to go so that we can take the group photograph.
What we had actually organized now is someone with a drone, which would make it easier in the sense of, because it's a very flat place here.
When
So
will they be here?
We could do it now in front of the church, and then the NELCSA person would have to climb up on, say, a ladder or something.
When would the drone be here?
At 3.
Okay, then we'll start with the youth presentation and then do the photograph after that. I'd like the youth please to come forward. Youth is extremely important to our church. We possibly haven't got enough, or we haven't got enough young representatives, but I'm very pleased to see that there are some young faces in this group today. And we are getting more and more young people into the synod as synod delegates, and that's very nice. And youth is part of the development. We've spoke about theological training, youth work, Kailager. Youth is integral in our church, and it's very important that we support the youth work. And we are very thankful that the youth is going to present to us. There was also a task given to the various youth groups to actually respond, and we'll hear the feedback on that as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's not really necessary, but I understand why. Good afternoon, everyone. I've briefly met most of you here. I'm PJ Hanekom. I'm the vicar here at the UELC, and this is Mia Pertus. She gave us at least half of the sermon for the opening service. And we too will today be coordinating to give you a hopefully not too lengthy presentation on the situation of youth in the church. Now, just to begin very briefly, it's a strange picture to use to begin such a presentation. 2 grey heads sitting in a rather empty set of pews. But I think it's sending us a message, or we're trying to send a message with it, that clearly the church is not decaying. We are celebrating growth here. But it is the fact that the church is greying. And we have to look at how does the presence of youth look in a church, in our church, with the reality of greying. Today, we are going to give you 3 presentations as youth. Mia's and my own will be the first. And then after the break, we will have Erika and Julia that will be giving you some statistical feedback from the NELCSA questionnaire that all of your youth so diligently answered for us. Mia will now begin by asking you a few questions. Now, I do want to ask that the team leaders lead these questions. We're going to give you a link. You just have to go to the internet. So on the laptops of the team leaders, please go to the internet to the website called Mentimeter. There's a code that you will enter, and then the responses that you will be discussing in your tables will come onto a big platform here in a cloud. So I'm approaching 30. That means I'm not as youthful as I once was. Technology isn't my greatest gift, but I'm sure we'll be able to figure all of this out. And with that, Mia, I'll let you run them through the questions.
Okay, so while we're waiting for you to all go onto your links, and just to turn around with your whole groups as well, maybe afterwards, I'll just run through the questions real quick. Our focus is to find out what is going on with the youth, why the youth is declining, and what we can do to change this. So, thinking of your local church on a regular Sunday, perhaps in the school holidays or over a long weekend, when the kids are back from university or boarding school? What is going on? Where do you see the youth? Do they belong, or are they part of the family? Or do they want to be there? Do they understand what it is all about? Do they carry what happens there with them into the week? So this is... Sorry.
Just to ask, can you quickly gather? We're going to spend about 10 minutes on this part. Can you gather in your table groups? I believe we've got 15 in total. Just turn around, and then I ask the group leaders to go onto that website, Mentimeter, enter the code, and then...
PJ?
Yes?
We got one question there.
Can you please put that on a WhatsApp group for here?
Okay,
because not
sure.
everybody's got their laptops with them.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Lieselotte will have to do that. Lieselotte, if you can put that onto the group.
Is this Mentimeter thing the actual feedback that we are giving you? Or do the recorders have to still record handwritten? Maybe just announce that.
The minute takers don't have to write down the discussions. We just want the answers typed out on the platform.
Oh, so the minute takers don't have to write down this discussion. It's just for us to use as research at the end. I think it's all. Sit down op die app.
As hulle responses hier opkom, dan bedoel ek dit was 'n sukses. As hulle hier opkom, miskien moet ons draai.
Ja. Okay, I'm going to repeat the first question. Think of your local church on a regular Sunday, perhaps in the school holidays or even over a long weekend, when the kids are back from university or boarding school. What is going on? Where do you see the youth or not? Do they belong and are they a part of the family? And do they want to be there? Do they understand what it is all about? Do they carry what happens there with them into the week or only on Sunday?
That's just an expansion on the short
Yeah.
question. So, net 'n vinnige verdere kommentaar is ek weet nie. These are big, complex questions, but we do want to encourage you, just allow it to let the intellectual juices flow. You don't have to give textbook answers here. Just write down your impressions, and we'll move on. We will be going through these questions ourselves as well.
Just in terms of time, and we can't see, because there's only one question at a time, how many questions are coming our way, and
There's
how much
only
time
3
do we have?
questions. Three
Three questions, and how much time do we have?
3 minutes each. Oh, then, yeah. Okay, ons moet maar net aanbeweeg. Okay, and done with the first question. We're going to move on to the second one. Okay, so the second question is, how do you explain this to yourself or to others? Why are they not? Why are they there, these problems? Why is the situation the way it is?
3 minutes. 44 bars. Okay, yeah, close enough. Ja, dit is. Ek hoop nie ons kom deur die res van ons aanbieding, anders knip ons af. Ons sê vir hulle, as hulle regtig nuuskierig is, dan kan hulle met ons kom gesels by die etenstafel.
Ja. That's good. It's a conversation. Okay.
Weet jy wat meer? Ja. Ek dink ons kyk vir die order, maar worst case scenario, soos laat ons lank in ons sien, dan kan ons eintlik aangaan na die weer, en dan knip ons die panel discussion weer net uit.
Okay.
Maar dit is nie wens.
Ja. Ja. Of ons nie te baie uitbrei. Okay. It's actually long. Tik maar net.
Dink hulle stel hom op
COVID.
1 minute left.
1 minute left for the second question. Well, okay. Next question. When you sit down around a campfire with a good beer in your hand, busy solving the world's problems, what would you want to say about these issues? What have you thought about with the church, the clergy, the laity alike? What can you do about it? I'm sorry, there's no beer provided for this scenario.
That was a good question. Sy het net gevra, is dit van bier? Hulle het nie Cornelia, jy informeer dit kan. Sy sê verstaan is ons verkeer by. Ja. Hierso staan, die mense moes kan sien.
Wait. 46 calls.
1 minuut. Net vir sê 1 minute.
1 minute left.
Sorry, no, it's elapsed.
Where?
Ek gou skeel 'n minuut.
And I'm gonna say okay, and we'll discuss these questions later. And I'll prepare you with the fun part, statistics.
Okay. Determine. Ja. Weet jy dit? Oh, dit werk. Wow.
Ja.
Ek kan staan, ek gaan
Ek sal hier so agter jou laptop staan en scroll die notas.
so. O, ja nee, ek kan nie te ver gaan nie, ek moet daar dop hou.
Ja.
Okay. Dink jy kan vir hulle
Okay, and with that, we're ending with the questions. We'll revisit your answers later, and you can all go back to your seats now.
Waar's daai klok? Asseblief. Met fors. O, daar is dit.
Voor die tyd iets uitstuur dat ons dit kan lees en voorberei hoe ons hierdie gaan doen en alles is. Ons is nie soos julle vandag kan.
Maar geldige punt. All right, with all of your responses still percolating, we'll be looking at these 3 questions throughout the course of our presentation as well. And the first thing that we will do is we will be zooming in to the first question. Well, zooming out with the first question, and we'll be looking at some data and statistics. After the data and statistics, we will then be looking at reflecting on it. How can this data be understood, and how can we respond to it? Before that, perhaps we should just mention regarding definitions, it's a little bit of a tricky affair. Youth and adulthood is defined differently throughout different times and places, and even in our church, I think our categories don't align very neatly with organizations like the LWF or the World Health Organization or the African Union, etc. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to use those loose definitions. Youth refer to people between the ages of 13 and 35. I said 30 to 35 because that means that I'm still youth according to that statistic. But also because the LWF works upon this basis. Until the age of 30, you're strictly speaking still regarded youth, but you can still serve in youth capacities until the age of 35. Perhaps it's because we take longer to mature these days. But from 35 onwards, you're probably in the category of late or middle adulthood. There we go. You want to say something about the... All right. Firstly, to zoom out, we'll be looking at some global trends. And bear with me here. Don't get lost in the details. We're going to run through this at some speed. I just want you to get a feeling for the general situation. Globally, the story of Christianity is one of both growth and decline. So the religion is still growing numerically. Between the years 2010 to 2020, there were 121 million Christians that were born or came into the faith new. So we're getting, our numbers are growing, but at the same time, we're declining as a percentage of the world's population. So over the same period of time, Christianity has been declining by about 1.8%. So this slide perhaps illustrates it a little bit more clearly and more gravely. For every one Christian that joins, 3.1 leave. So the trend is definitely towards disaffiliation, but it's also towards switching out of religions. And the religion to which there is switched mostly is that bottom one, the unaffiliated. It basically means persons who don't identify with any given faith. Now, where this comes to our presentation is the youth do seem to have this general tendency exacerbated. So it's a bit more intense. We seem to be going through the general motions of decline just at a higher rate. And some of the markers used to illustrate this, according to the Pew Research Center that we used, are markers such as identification, meaning do you identify as a Christian or not? Estimation, meaning in what regard do you hold religion? Then attendance and prayer. And according to every single one of these metrics, through quite a lot of surveys that the organization has done, the youth tend to be less religious than older adults in the vast majority of countries, especially in the West. So one would see that youth have a tendency to identify less with any religious group than the adults do. Youth have a tendency to say that they consider religion as very important in much less countries than the adults do. They also tend to attend worship services much less regularly on a weekly basis than adults do, and praying daily also. One sees that youth tend to do this much less than their older counterparts. Now, when we zoom in a little bit and we focus on our region, the sub-Saharan region, we see that there is something of a bucking of the trend. So the sub-Saharan region is the one region in which Christianity is growing at a rather substantial rate. We currently have 30.7% of all Christians in the world. And yes, this comes with a fair bit of growth that's different in the in the Americas and in Europe. But though we see this bucking of the trend on the surface, as soon as we start looking at the markers, in the South African context, then we'll have to reverse some of this progress a bit. But first, sub-Saharan trends, this also applies to youth. You'll note that there in the middle, those dark red spots, those are the amount of Christians that tend to regard religion as very important to daily life. You'll see Africa, because the area above is mostly Muslim. Sub-Saharan Africa, hands down, has the highest percentage of people who regard religion as very important to daily life. And this is amongst youth. It's between 60 to 98% regarded as very important to daily life. So that's attendance and to prayer. Okay, there we go. So same applies to attendance and to prayer. The sub-Saharan region of Africa has much higher rates of youth attendance, of weekly youth attendance of services, as well as much higher levels of youth engaging in prayer daily. So these markers seem to be less potent in the African region. But before we get too positive, we have to look at South Africa. So if we revisit these slides, you'll note that it comes to when it comes to the regarding religion is very important. You'll see South Africa is bright orange, and the other countries in sub-Saharan Africa tend not to be. Just take in the slides in the meantime. Okay, let's tighten it closer to my mouth, as such. Okay.
We cannot see from this angle which is what. I see dark and light, but I don't know what the dark stands for, and I don't know what the light stands for.
Sure thing. Yes, we'll make the surveys available to anybody who's interested in the detail afterwards, but this is just some images to make sure that we don't have an abundance of text on the slides. I'll get to the conclusions in just a second. But so here in the first slide, the rest of sub-Saharan Africa seems to have very good statistics when it comes to young people who regard religion as very important, but you'll see right at the point of the continent, there's a little orange dot, and that indicates that in South Africa, this is less the case than elsewhere in the continent. Same when it comes to the attendance of weekly worship services. South Africa, again, is a little bit of an outlier to the general trend in sub-Saharan Africa. And then also when it comes to daily prayer, the same applies. So if we keep all of this data in tension with one another, we see that in sub-Saharan Africa, there are positive trends that are contrary to the general decline of Christianity elsewhere in the world. But South Africa seems to be something of an exception. We tend to fall more towards the Western norm than to the rest of our subcontinent. And I think if we reflect on the situation in our own church, we can see some of this also reflected. On paper, we seem to have a very stable youth life. It was difficult to work through all of the statistics. I could only access 2021's stats for the numbers of children and youth in our church, and that's now from the ages of 0 to 25. It seems as though we have more than 2,160 members of the youth, and if you compare the change in the numbers to other age groups, then it doesn't seem as though we have a youth crisis. It seems that the story is one of stable decline, as with other age groups in our church. But I think experience is a different story, and we'll probably see it when we revisit those questions we asked you in the beginning. So this all is just to illustrate that, keep in mind, the challenges that we are facing in our church with youth is not unique to us. It's part of a bigger picture of Christianity declining and being challenged throughout the entire world. Now, we will be going on to reflect on this data. Well, why is this going on? Why are we having these difficulties? What are some of the things that influence the decline? There are very many directions in which one can run with this question. It is a complex question, and we definitely don't have the time to give it its due justice. But we'll be working with one local theologian's extensive reflection on the topic. That's Professor Malan Nel. He wrote a very, very highly recommended book, Youth Ministry and Inclusive Missional Approach. And his reaction to this decline is to focus in on culture, to look at what are some of the changes that have been going on in the last few decades and even centuries pertaining to culture, and how is that forming the young people that we wish to bring up in our churches. So, given the realities that face us in the world more broadly, we Christians do have to be students of culture, and one of the ways in which one can do this is by looking at that big scary word, postmodernism. Malan Nel, along with many other academics and thinkers, proposed that postmodernism is the dominant cultural paradigm in the Western world, at least. And the difficulty is postmodernism is precisely the sort of thing that doesn't fit neatly into a paradigm, a framework of looking at the world. It's not a broad brush with which we can paint every youth in our church or even every adult, but it's more the message that the years of broad brush painting are behind us. The way in which young people and adults interact with the world and look at it is very, very complex. And this influences the way the church engages with her members, be they young or old. Do you want to say something about the culture?
Sorry, that all might seem a bit confusing, but to take into account, another theologian from Stellenbosch said that this postmodernism in South Africa is a culture that was influenced by things like COVID-19 and apartheid. And even though it influenced all age groups, the youth was influenced in a different way, and they had a more diverse and open way of thinking about this. And that is what we are talking about now.
Perfect. Okay, so regarding a very brief overview, one can oversimplify the matter because we have to, and one can look at the situation as progressing from pre-modern thought, which was very authoritarian-based and groupthink-based. Your religion was the religion of your cultural group, your community, very little mobility. Progressing to the modern period in rationalism, when reason reigned supreme and the autonomy of the individual was very important, to where we are today with postmodernism, which tends to be a more open-minded and a more relative way of interacting with the world and living in it. It's a very, very big oversimplification, but I think it's necessary. Postmodernism made arguments or modernism made arguments or experiments. Postmodernism tells stories. And where we are today is somewhere in between those two places, between the dominance of reason and the dominance of stories. Now, given that, we have to mention postmodernism is not only one great evil. It also presents the church with many opportunities. We just have to keep in mind that it has an effect on how young people think, how they engage with the world, how they engage with themselves, with God, parents, and we have to take this into account when we wish to present to them the gospel, the faith once for all delivered to the saints. Mia, you could perhaps tell us a little bit more about this cycle.
So we naturally all know there's a gap between adults and adolescents because we all know teenagers come into that phase where they want to find themselves and they want to discover new things without their parents. And this is a very normal cycle. But at the moment, the way we are going is sometimes that cycle where the adults then give the adolescents space, seeing as they can sometimes have this young narcissism that is also spoken about, which is important. This gap that is formed sometimes can be interpreted by adolescents as abandonment. And then they feel to a sense alone and they don't know what choices they are making are correct or incorrect, which causes this gap where they maybe seek things in different and wrong places.
So in order to summarize the effect of postmodernism, just in a broad sense, shall you read for us these two quotes?
Okay, so according to Malanel, the millennials are getting full-blown, no-hold-barred postmodern thought. The students with whom we work were born into a culture of transition, and children born today are entering thoroughly into a postmodern world. This is not to say that all students will adopt postmodern traits, but postmodernism will be the reigning school of thought, and postmodernity will be the reigning culture when our students arrive at college. And another thought, youth grow up in a world that uses stories and words as power grabs, uses feelings, not reason, embraces moral relativism, celebrates pluralism, diversity, and tolerance. It replaces immorality with amorality, promotes an agonizing pessimism, displaces hope with despair, fosters a longing for connections and permanence, advances interest in spirituality, dismisses Christianity, and sees faith as a smorgasbord.
Now, again, I think that image probably illustrates it quite nicely. You've got all of these children with hula hoops, but each hula hoop basically has a constellation contained within itself. The effect of postmodernism, I think, very much is that people have a tendency to occupy their own self-declared, self-constructed universes. And that makes it very, very difficult for collectivity in matters of religion or in matters of morality or many such matters. Now, what we're going to do is to try and use 8 pictures to apply the effect of postmodernism to adult culture, but also to youth subculture. And these will be the points that we're trying to make. These are traits of postmodernism reigning in the current milieu. The first is a secular attitude. The second is the phenomenon of a modern paganism. The third is the fall of the public man or woman. The fourth is materialism. And then how that flows over to youth subcultures is it leads to a negotiation of identity, the plural self, a sense of homelessness, and a testing of norms. These are just summary points. We'll be looking at them in this fashion. First, secularism. One effect of postmodernism is that the religious has very much become optional. So religion is something that's relegated to the private sphere. It's a matter for your own conscience. It's a matter that you have to decide upon at the end of the day. You'll see in this picture, there's a church that's been converted into a bar or a cafe of sorts. Religion can coincide, or religious images and symbols can coincide without any difficulty with a complete absence of faith, with a complete absence of relation to the divine or to other religious people. Now, one of the effects of the secularism that comes with postmodernism is that people that do come to faith have to arrive at a position that they know that this is my choice, and it's good for me, and it's valid for me, but it's only one choice. There are many others around the table, and it kind of paralyzes a person from taking the hard stances of previous generations, saying that this is the one truth which shall be defended unto the death. We'll go to war for it. Times have changed. People don't live in those spaces as generally anymore, at least not in the Christian environment.
This also links with the generations then having the subconscious thought that they can live without God, that they are only dependent on Him when they need Him, and that they can use science and human worldly things to help themselves and not religion.
Actually, tying in directly to that, the second aspect, modern paganism. I think the picture again illustrates it quite nicely. There is a supernova in each individual of options. You're not constrained to the religious options that were available to your parents or to their parents before them. You have a plethora of religious systems or non-religious systems that you can pick and choose from as you like in order to engage in self-betterment or to actualize yourself in this world. And that's something that all young people are faced with on social media platforms, in the literature that they read, in the media that they consume, movies, music, etc. It's very much the case that there's a constellation of religious and non-religious options that are available to every person. And one of the effects of this is that people have a tendency to then turn inward. We look at our needs and we ask ourselves, what things from these different systems can serve my health, my wealth, my social viability, and then we choose this and we construct for ourselves a modern paganism in which we create gods that serve the purposes that we want them to serve.
There's also a scroll that was written by Socrates, and they found this, and Van den Heuvel also wrote about this, is he described the youth of then in the Greek culture. And it's shocking how much it reflects our youth and culture today as well. He writes, "Youth today loves luxury. They have bad manners, have contempt for authority, no respect for older people, and talk nonsense when they should work. Young people do not stand up any longer when adults enter the room. They contradict their parents, talk too much in company, guzzle their food, lay their legs on the table, and tyrannize their elders." According to Van den Heuvel, this reference to young people's behavior is typical of the decline of Greek culture, where adults no longer produced the clear leadership and inspiration that could be accepted happily by young adults.
I'm realizing that we've only gotten to the third point out of those 8, and if I look at the time, we're not going to be able to treat all of them with the necessary depth. So again, we'll make this available to all who are interested afterwards. maybe we can skim through these next ones. Another element is the fall of the public man. Because people are so individualistic and because we have lost our trust in external authorities to dictate to us what we should think and how we should live, people have a tendency to disengage from the public sphere. We see it playing out politically, but we also see it playing out religiously. People are happy with the options that they have in their own personal relations to the divine. They don't see the need necessarily for an institution to play a role in that, and that includes the church. Another final element of postmodernism is this materialism. We have a tendency of focusing on the here and the now. Pleasure and absence of suffering gets prioritized over long-term, perhaps eternal security. And I thought the picture again was excellent. It's from, I think, Caravaggio, with Thomas putting his finger into Jesus' side, and instead of the Lord, we have there a McDonald's menu. So this sort of thing plays a big role in young people's lives, a focus on the imminent, that which you can touch, that which you can use here and now. Long-term promises about eternal salvation, those things tend to not break through so easily as they once did. Now, this influences youth culture in 4 very particular ways, but just give me a second. When are we ending? We will not be looking at how this affects adolescent culture, but again, we'll send the slides through. Let's progress maybe to the final question about what can we do about it. How can we engage with these elements of postmodernism and the effect that they have on our interaction with young people? We'll send this entire book out on whichever WhatsApp group you would prefer. It's available for free. In it, Malanel makes 2 arguments, and there are 3 consequences to it. The first is, one argument in 3 premises in the conclusion. The church is in its essence missional, all right? That means, youth are fully and integrally part of the church as well. And then premise 3 is being missional entails being faithful to the Great Commission. That means that the church should make disciples of all people, including her own, by baptizing them and teaching them all that Jesus taught. The conclusion of those 3 premises is that youth are fully and integrally part of that body that makes disciples of all people, including her own, by baptizing them and by teaching them to do all that Jesus has taught. Now, the consequences of that argument are, though unique, youth can never be separated from the rest of the faith community. Youth should never, nowhere be ignored, and youth are the responsibility of the whole faith community. This plays out in the 8 classical functions of the faith. That means, in the church's preaching and in her worship, the youth should feature, and they should be part of both of those elements. This does not mean you have to have youth services and youth sermons. No. Youth are just as much part of that congregation which is preached the gospel to every single Sunday. And the church should be cognizant of the fact that we're not preaching to youth as a separate entity. We're preaching to youth as volwaardige, full members of the congregation. Same with teaching and witness. This is the area into which youth, at least teaching, is most naturally thrown. They get confirmed, and then they become full-grown congregants. But no, youth should be taught many aspects of the faith, yes, but they can also teach. They should engage in it. They should also witness. Engaging in mission is not something that's only left to the adults that have already passed their Prüfung. It is also for the young people. They can teach us very much about what it means to be a Christian. Pastoral care, diaconia, fellowship and administration, in those areas also, it is extremely important to find ways in which youth ministry can be incorporated into all of these areas. It should not be a 9th point on that table. On the contrary, youth ministry should feature in every single one of those activities of the church. It would have been wonderful to go through all of them with you, but time will not allow. So again, we'll share the presentation. But for now...
This photo also reminded me a bit of The Lion King with Mufasa, where the monkey holds up the lion to the whole animal crowd. And I think if you have watched The Lion King, you will also learn that he wouldn't have been able to do what he did in that movie without the community and his pride that he had with him. And just like that, it is also important for adolescent people to have their parents and their church community and village that they belong to, which is why it is important to encourage to do things like worship, have more Bible studies, and implement that in your households as well, to keep their faith growing and for them to know where they belong, even if they do need their space sometimes.
We will then very briefly conclude, but I would encourage you to take all of the confusion that came from this presentation to us around the dinner table, and we'll even keep the slides by the hand, yeah? And elaborate on what we couldn't touch upon here. In summary, the times are a-changin', as Bob Dylan sang in a different period of transition, and yet the faith is constant, once for all delivered to the saints. Young and old, or older, are right alongside one another, and we are contending for the same faith in the same current changes. I think the question is whether we see each other, whether we talk to each other, whether we make space for one another, and whether we grow together. And those are open questions, which this body, well, can take with them back into the congregations, and it must be answered in dialogue with the young people, but also with one another. The young people are just another normal part of the congregation. We have a lot to give, we have a lot to learn, and yeah, together we go forward.
Thank you very much for that interesting, thought-provoking, partially disturbing, yes, but very challenging presentation. And it highlights also the importance of youth work and youth workers in our church, that we engage with our youth. It is extremely important. And we won't take questions now. We'll take questions later when we've done the second part. This was the first part of the youth presentation. And I do understand that some of the slides were very small, especially people sitting further back could not read them. So we'll make them available and send them out so that we can all read them. I think this is just starting a discussion. And I suggest that the congregations and youth synod representatives take this back into your congregation and discuss it further, maybe in your circuit workshops, that we actually talk about how we address and how we communicate with our youth. We are going to have the youth, a group photograph just now. Is the photographer there, Udo? And then we're going to break for lunch till 10 to tea. I'm so hungry, I didn't have anything these last 2 days. We'll break for tea and coffee, and we'll be back at 10:02, so we'll be 5 minutes later. All members of the Senate preparation team, those that who were involved in preparing for this and also involved in the devotion, if you could please come back here. You'll get your coffee, but please come back directly after the photograph, that we just can finalize some issues on the devotion. And then, yeah, we'll take the photograph now. Udo, we'll follow you.
Everybody meet in front of the church.
Testing 1 2 testing. Testing 1 2 3 4 5